Just come across an article from the Daily Telegraph via Microsoft News, and it makes for a depressing reading for those of us who love the cinema. That is the traditional cinema for my American viewers, the movie theater. Um, I'm not going to read out the whole article, but it's quite lengthy. But just to touch on the gist of it, this is the headline, and the article's by Michael Coakley. Virtual actors and in-game screenings, cinema's demise could usher in a new era in entertainment. Hmm. On Monday, Cineworld confirmed its plans to temporarily close 600 theatres across its two biggest markets, the US and the UK, hitting 45,000 employees. The decision followed yet another delay to the release of the latest Bond film, No Time to Die. Amid the coronavirus pandemic, producers MGM and Universal decided to push back the film until next spring. It's going to be April 2021. That would represent the long hiatus of a Bond film from last Bond film since the 6 years between License to Kill and GoldenEye. I sometimes wonder, will this film ever be released? Um, but the article then continues. But Cineworld is just the latest in the line of closures that have hobbled the filmmaking industry. Odeon, which owns 120 cinemas across the UK and Ireland, said it would shut a quarter of its screens during the week. The boss of rival chain View Cinema, meanwhile, described the Bond release delay as a body blow. To add to the pain, streaming giants have scooped up a range of big name titles destined for cinemas over the past few months. For instance, Tom Hanks' World War II submarine movie Greyhound was sold to Apple TV Plus for around $70 million. Rather than the death of cinema, could this be its remaking? Recent turmoil in the industry has opened up opportunities to allow filmmakers to adapt in a digital age, with socially distanced film production proving difficult and Hollywood A-listers in lockdown. A gap has been created for the emergence of everything from virtual actors to in-game screenings. I don't even know what that means. Computer-generated robot actors are increasing in popularity, and Michaela, that's with a Q, became the first to be signed to a major agency, Creative Artists Agency CAA, excuse me, which represents the likes of Scarlett Johansson, Will Smith, and Steven Spielberg, snapped up the digital avatar who has 2.7 million followers on Instagram. I've never heard of this. So Michaela is some sort of synthetic, is she? Created by LA startup Brood, Michaela has already signed brand partnerships with the likes of Samsung, Calvin Klein, and YouTube. The CGI character has released several singles and positions herself as a social justice activist. The benefits of a virtual actor are many. There is no more complaining about salary or working actors. They are always camera ready and they can mold their image and personality to fit the audience at the time. However, the robot takeover of the cinema industry is not quite there yet. Thank goodness. I think the technology will need to improve a lot to get to that, says Robert Mitchell, director of the theatrical insights at Guard Street Analytics. We still see films struggling from what the industry terms uncanny valley. The issue brings something that the human eye understands not quite real about these characters. Mitchell says the tech works much better when it's overlaid onto a real performance, much in the way the Norwegian actress Ingvild Delia brought a youthful Princess Leia back in Star Wars Rogue One. The great thing about technology is not that it's replacing actors, it's about advancing what actors can do. And the article continues, I won't read everything because it's quite lengthy. I'm skeptical. Maybe I'm stubborn about this, but I really think that it's just, what really bugs me is this thing that we must change, we must change, we must change. I totally understand that the pandemic has affected everything. So the number of intakes to cinemas worldwide has greatly decreased. And so the industry's going to be hit hard by that. I totally get that. But I do think that if it is going to be a temporary issue, then why this urge to change everything? Um, I actually think that the way for the industry to survive is by making it tempting again. So reducing prices, for example. Um, My local cinema, they now have a standard price. It's Empire Cinemas. That's the chain. They have a set standard price of £5.99, which is okay. That's not too bad. Um, but that recent David Attenborough film I was going to say, the documentary, £17.50 for a live stream. That is the sort of nonsense that will just put people off. No one is going to pay that, or very, very few people, unless they really, really, really want to see it. So I think for cinema to survive, they need to be realistic. They need to look at competitive rates. So if people are willing to, buy their own snacks, which is a lot less, and then pay to watch Netflix or whatever, then cinema chains are really going to have to look at how they, for example, the extortionate prices they have on popcorn and drinks and so on, reduce that at least a little bit. Um, I think there's a lot of things to be looked at. The idea of robot actors, to me, it just seems fake. It just seems very artificial. And I appreciate a lot of films now use CGI in terms of the special effects. I'm not anti CGI. I can appreciate, for example, with I watched Man of Steel the other night with Henry Cavill as Superman. A film like that, you would expect CGI, you'd expect a lot of special effects. But what concerns me is if there's this kind of cavalier attitude to good old fashioned acting. I imagine a lot of actors' unions would be uneasy about this, because they might feel the way that cartoonists felt when CGI was coming in, particularly in the Disney universe. I'll be quite honest, I'm skeptical of radical changes. I mean, okay, you might say cinema's always adapted on some level, it's always changed throughout history. If we look 100 years ago, the 1918 pandemic, that's when cinema was in its infancy. It was the silent era. Then the talkies came in. Then over time, Technicolor. Um, and the industry has always adapted, but the idea of the big screen itself demising to me is so tragic. And that's why I feel a natural hostility to the likes of Netflix. For one thing, with Netflix, I don't like the fact that you pay a sort of contract, right? It's like this thing with mobile phones. You pay a contract, and then you have 6 months or whatever, but you have to then watch the film within that time. Okay, I suppose you could say that's like a film being released on the cinema, but what I dislike about it, I have a friend who subscribes to Netflix, with some of the programming. I'm not talking about films. Take Downton Abbey, for instance. They advertised Downton Abbey on Netflix, but they cut off the last episodes that were, I'm not quite sure what he meant, but there's definitely flaws with Netflix. But it's just like, for me, it's not the content. I'm sure they've got good content, but it's the fact that a small screen is never going to be the same. Now, I watch films all the time on the small screen in my living room, right, where I am right now, and that's fine. It is what it is. It's good. It's entertaining. It's a relaxing evening, but it will not beat the magic of the big screen. It just won't. Okay, it might be different if you're relaxing with your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Um, and it's a film you particularly like, there may be something there. But generally speaking, there is a world of difference between watching a film on the small screen and watching it on the big screen. For me, you cannot replace the magic of that. I just don't see how they can do that. As for a synthetic actor, like a robot actor, I'm gonna have to look into this Michaela avatar, but I mean, what is the point of actors being actors if they're just going to be replaced by a robot? I mean, they say it adapts what actors can do, but isn't that a cheat? I mean, the whole point of acting is skill of acting, of someone pretending to be someone else, of someone portraying a character, of putting on that performance. It's about body language, it's about the visual aesthetics of how someone interprets a role. So if it's all just a robotic thing with an actor's voiceover, um, I just think it would be a total tragedy. So I think if, I mean, in the case of Sunderland, we only have one cinema. So if Empire suddenly announced its closing, that would just be so depressing. So depressing. You know, Sunderland had a lot of cinemas. When I came here in the year 2000, it had none. It had closed its last cinema doors in 1998. Then we waited 6 years. When we got the Empire Cinema, that was a big thing because until then, and that was 2004, until then, people in Sunderland had to go to Bolton Colliery, which is a village to the north of Sunderland, where there was a Cineworld complex, or excuse me, UFC complex, UGC, not UFC, excuse me. I don't know if it's still open, but I remember how good it was when Sunderland finally got its own cinema, big multiplex, and it's a good cinema. Um, I just think it's so sad if cinema was to decline. That's why I'm trying to take any opportunity I can for a film that I might like, go and see it, try, and partly because I want to, but partly because I want to play a role in helping keep the industry afloat, a tiny little role as a consumer. I I'm kind of depressed about this news because I think that I suppose having an avatar actor is better than no big screen at all, but I don't know. It's just this, put it this way, you get things that suddenly change, right? Because there's this desire to change everything. Oh, we have to change. And then what happens? People have a desire for nostalgia. Why do you think we have 1950s themed restaurants? Because actually, people are, I don't want to say conservative, but people don't like radical change as much as these big, powerful corporations think. People are more traditionalist than these big, powerful industry bosses believe they are. And people like traditional cinema, they do. I know I'm not the only one. Anyway, I'm just going to rant about this because it bugs me, to be honest. Depresses me. Let me know your thoughts. I'm not being, I don't want to be totally negative about Netflix. I'm sure it's got merits. I'm sure there are some rationales about why some of these things are happening. But I mean, in the case of this Bond film, if it means cancelling the premiere, then do it. You know, cancel the premiere, let us see the film. I'm not sure what the rationale for scaling it back yet again is, but to me, I mean, the selection of films from the local cinema isn't wonderful. It's all right, it's not great, but I just sincerely hope the big screen survives. That would be such a tragedy. And I'll tell you something, if I ever became a billionaire, let's say it did collapse, if I ever became a billionaire, I would rejuvenate it. I would do what I could to rejuvenate it because it would be a total tragedy. So I just hope that doesn't happen. Let me know your thoughts.